record. Okay, well, thank you for coming along to watch our next episode of Meet the Organisation. Today, we would like to introduce you to the Brigitte Trust. And today we're going to be listening from Mandy East, who is the Volunteer and Training Manager, and Susan Wakenhall, who is a long-term volunteer at the Brigitte Trust. I'll just quickly introduce me and Frida. I am the Volunteer Centre Manager at Voluntary Action Reigate and Banstead, and here is our wonderful Frida Norman, who is our CEO. So, Mandy, I will let you speak.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks so much to both of you for inviting us on. We're here, I think I've got it right, that we're here to really try and get you to be interested in volunteering with the Brigitte Trust. So just a little bit about the Brigitte Trust. We are a charity based in Dorking, covering all of Surrey, and next year, 2024, will be our 40th anniversary. So we've been around for a while, and we're really proud of our local roots and also our local team of volunteers. So we will take volunteers from all over Surrey, so Reigate and Banstead, absolutely right there in the heart of where we take our volunteers from. So the Brigitte Trust was set up to provide volunteers to give emotional support and light practical help to people who've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So back at 40 years ago, most of our clients had cancer. And cancer back then was much more of a terminal diagnosis. So as the years have progressed, we've supported people, continuing to support people with cancer diagnoses, but also people with some of the more neurological conditions, such as motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis, and some of the lesser known neurological conditions as well, such as multi-systems atrophy and PSP. Basically, all our clients have had a terminal diagnosis. Some of them we will support for a short period of time just to get them over that initial diagnosis stage. Some we will be with for the duration, and we will be with them until the client dies. But all of our volunteers are there to provide emotional support and practical help. One of the things that we're really proud of is that all our volunteers have done a robust training programme. So we do ask you, if you want to become a volunteer with us, to give up a little bit of time to do a training course with us. And the training course runs for 6 weeks. It's a morning a week for 6 weeks and one weekend halfway through. And the reason that we do the training course and why we ask you to be alongside us for that is because it's really important to us that we cover everything that you might have to deal with your client. So if you're interested in volunteering with us, we have training courses running 3 times a year. They are across Surrey, and there will always be one that will be accessible to people in your area. We have one starting in February of next year, February the 13th of next year, and there's still space on that if you're interested in talking about that. And then if that doesn't work out, there will be another one in June and a further course in the autumn of next year. So it's a really, really wonderful role, and the training is also incredibly beneficial, not just for the role, but in life itself as well. And we'll take volunteers from all and any backgrounds. So any backgrounds at all, any level of experience, give us a shout and we'll talk about it. What would probably be a better idea, though, is to hear from one of our existing volunteers who's been doing the role for 10 years this year. Susan also helps with the training and working with newer volunteers as well. So maybe I'll hand over to Susan and she can tell you a bit about what the role actually involves and some of the things that she's done as part of this role. So Susan, over to you.
Thank you, Mandy. As Mandy said, I started volunteering about 10 years ago, and that was shortly after I retired, as I think happens with a fair number of our volunteers. You stop working, you start thinking, well, what else can I do that might be of use? I'd never heard of the Trust before until I heard one of their speakers at a concert which was raising money for them. I have found it an extremely rewarding and satisfying experience. I've always treated it as if I'm actually still doing a professional job for which I'm paid. but they don't pay me. So I've had a range of clients, some of whom have really wanted me for the practical help I can give, whether that's taking them to appointments or taking them out shopping. Some of them have wanted me for more unusual practical experiences, shall we say. I was once asked if I would be any use with a computer, and as I can't get the video working this morning, that was obviously the wrong thing to answer. But I was asked if I could work with a computer because there was a client who wanted to compile a family tree before she died. And as it's something I do as a hobby anyway, that was absolutely fabulous. Really loved working for her. For 6 weeks, 2 months, that's exactly what we did. We worked on her family tree. But that tree also gave me the opportunity to talk to her about her life. And she really did talk in great detail about what her life had been like, the things she regretted, the things she'd enjoyed, the things she wanted to sort out before she died. So it turned from being very much practical help to being really strong emotional support. And it is very much a privilege to be in that position, to be there every week. And to spend that amount of time with someone is actually quite unusual. And it does give them the opportunity to reflect, to talk about things, and to talk about aspects of their life and maybe their impending death, which they're not ready or willing or don't feel able to talk to people closer to them about. They can almost sound things out on a trust volunteer, and we are totally non-judgmental. It allows them the freedom to try and work through some of the emotional turmoil that they're going through. And the opposite side of that is it's a jolly good laugh at times, and that sounds ridiculous when you're supporting somebody who is considering a huge change in their life, if not considering their death. But for example, I remember taking one client who had terminal cancer to Currys to buy a new fridge freezer because hers had just packed in. And after she started the agreement with them, the gentleman tried the hard push for selling the 10-year guarantee. And she just laughed and said, "Darling, I'm going a lot sooner than this fridge is." And it's lovely to be alongside somebody when that happens. And you can have a laugh and a joke. You can share interests, which makes it a lovely, easy relationship. The other side, I suppose, is I did have one gentleman client who really didn't want to discuss his emotions, nor did he want to discuss his medical condition. He said everybody else who turned up in his house talked about his health and what was wrong with him. And just for once, he'd like to still be considered a normal human being. And so we used to spend a bit of time watching the cricket, which was a revelation for me. I don't understand cricket from one end to the other. But he would also choose a topic for us to debate the following week. And before, during the course of the visit, he'd say, "Okay," and he'd be flicking through his iPad all the time. "I'll tell you what, next week we'll discuss Donald Trump, a source of good in the world." Okay, and which side am I arguing for? And he really enjoyed those sessions. And those sessions mainly gave his wife a chance to go out, do some shopping, go to the hairdressers, see the optician. So you get a whole range of experiences and a whole range of people. And 10 years on, I still very much look forward to seeing my client every week.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you, Susan.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's really given me an eye-opener of the role, because, you know, I've been here for 15 years at VARB, and I send people to Brigitte Trust to volunteer. I just didn't realise, you know, the massive impact the volunteers can make on people's lives. Thank you for sharing that, Susan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A question for Susan, actually. Did you the job you had before retiring was connected with like nursing or something like that, or was completely different?
I was head teacher of a special school, so I spent a lot of time talking with parents of very young disabled children, usually around a year old, and the connecting thing, if you like, was that nobody ever wanted their child to come to my school, because nobody ever wanted to have a child with a severe disability. I spent a lot of my time talking with parents about what the diagnosis was, but also what the potential future was. So in a way it's similar, in a way it's the opposite, because I ended up talking about possibilities for the future, and now I talk far more about reconciling the life that you've had. But although I'm talking a lot at the moment, I am quite a good listener.
Also, recently, and well, over the years that I've been with the Trust, we've had volunteers from all backgrounds. So although there are quite a few of our volunteers who have worked in healthcare or the care industry, we've recently had a volunteer join us whose whole life he spent as a heating engineer. We've got accountants, we've got people who've worked in the city. We've got women who have looked after families and not worked. So it is quite a wide array of people, actually. And what we'll always tend to find is that there is a caring nature within it, but it doesn't really matter what role you've got in your professional life or your previous professional life.
And as
sorry, Frida, I was going to say, I think the connecting thing really, if you're going to be a successful volunteer in this sort of role, you just have to like people, and you have to like meeting and getting to know people that you might not meet in the other realms of your life. It's a very broadening experience.
Yeah. As you mentioned, people with extra support needs. Do you have volunteers? Can someone with extra support needs volunteer with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who wants to volunteer, and we'll treat everyone individually and see what they can do. We do have volunteers who have physical disabilities, and we work around that. We have volunteers who have had or have mental health problems that we will just work around. We're also very flexible on once you start volunteering with us, if at any point during your time with us you need to take some time out, we're very aware that what we do can be quite all-consuming at some points. So if at any point you find that you need to take some time out, either because you've got your own family issues to deal with or because you just need some time to clear your own mind, we're very accommodating, we're very flexible on that. So I think we just take each person individually. I'll have a conversation with anyone who's interested, and we'll take it forward if we think it will be useful. Usually we'll have a conversation, and it's usually the volunteer that's deciding if there's any issues there. I'm quite open to talk to anyone.
Is there any remote volunteering for this for this role?
No, I can't be flexible on that, I'm afraid. It is a role where you have to be alongside the person. Yeah.
So you match people up with interests and where they live, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so Sarah, my colleague who does all the referrals, we laugh, we call it a bit like a dating agency, because when she meets a client, in her mind she's thinking, oh, Susan would be great for that, because she knows the volunteers. We're a really small team and we all try and get to know each other, so we do try and match people based on skill. I mean, sometimes, like Susan told you, sometimes it's just a wonderful match. You know, someone wants to research their family tree and it's something that Susan's got an interest in as well, so that's a great match. Other times it's maybe a bit more like, you know, someone loves gardening and the client loves gardening, but also we do make a point of seeing if our volunteers have any specific skills or speak any different languages. So sometimes we have clients for whom English isn't the first language. Oh, hi Susan.
Hello Susan, lovely to see you.
So sometimes we'll have clients for whom English isn't their first language, and although they can speak English perfectly well, sometimes we find that towards the end of life they want to revert back to their native language. So if we've got volunteers who can speak that language, that's wonderful for us. So we will always ask our volunteers, what skills can you bring to this? And sometimes that is really good. We had a woman once, a client once, who lived here for many years. She was Dutch, and she spoke perfect English, but just in the last 6 months of life she just forgot all her English. And we happened to have a volunteer who was also Dutch, and so they just conversed in their native tongue for the 6 months at the end of her life. And that was such a wonderful thing for her, because she did feel that she couldn't make herself understood, even though she had family who could translate for her. There's something about feeling comfortable in the way that you're communicating. So that was wonderful. And we have also had clients who are, there was a Polish client and we managed to match with a Polish volunteer. So that was wonderful as well.
No, that really is. And what is the minimum amount of time that a volunteer can volunteer with you?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's actually not it's time-wise, it's not a huge amount. So we ask every volunteer to give up to 3 hours a week. So we ask that the volunteer is prepared to give 3 hours. So some clients will want 3 hours of support every week, and that's what we offer to our clients. And that would be the client that Susan talked about that might want to go shopping, might want to go out for a cup of tea, might want to go to a local beauty spot or garden centre, and that's where the 3 hours would come in. Often during that 3 hours, the partner of the client is doing something else, so it's quite nice respite for them. But some of our clients can't manage 3 hours, and it might be that they only want an hour. And so it's quite dependent, but we ask that each volunteer has a free 3 hour period once a week to give. Usually it's during the working week. Most of our clients prefer to have weekday visits because they often have other things going on at weekends. However, there are clients for whom weekends can be quite lonely. So if you have volunteers interested who do a full-time job Monday to Friday, as long as they can make time to do the training, we would be happy to take them on, and we would find clients who might want a weekend visit. And that does work okay for our volunteers that work full time. And then distance wise, we usually match clients based in the local area. So the volunteers coming from Reigate and Banstead, it would usually be in that general area. So maybe 20 minutes, half an hour drive. But again, we can be flexible on that.
And if a volunteer doesn't drive, would you still take that volunteer on if they could use the public transport?
I would say I would prefer someone to drive and have access to a car.
Okay.
We have had a small number of volunteers over the years who haven't driven or have found themselves unable to drive after having trained with us. We will try and work around it, but my feeling is that getting public transport to go and visit someone can be quite stressful, because if the public transport's late, then you could be late for the client. And we're very much client led, and we never want the client to feel that we're adding to their stress. So we would prefer someone to drive and have access to a car.
Totally understandable. And do volunteers, do they just have one client during their time, or do people take on more than one client at a time?
Most have one. And that's what we say when people come to us, is you will have one client at a time once a week. There are a small number of our volunteers who have taken on a second client, maybe because there's a slight overlap at the end of one client, the beginning of another client. But Susan, I don't think you've ever had more than one at a time. Have you had more than one at a time? You're on mute.
You're on mute, Susan.
At the start, when I first volunteered, I had a small overlap when we knew my first client was already in the hospice, and there was somebody else local who was very appropriate. So knowing it was going to be for a very short amount of time, I did agree to that one. But generally, I would say one client, if you're really committed to them and you're visiting on a regular basis, that's quite a big chunk of your time, both pure time and emotional time. Yeah.
And if we could ask also, especially after the cost of living crisis of the past couple of years, do you pay travel expenses for volunteers?
We will pay all out-of-pocket expenses. So any travel to visit the client, any journeys that you do with the client, any parking, anything like that. I always say to the volunteers, we will cover any reasonable expenses. The things that we don't pay for, unfortunately, we won't pay for the tea and cake that you might have whilst you're out with the client in the garden centre. We won't pay for lunch that you might have when you're out. But there's no obligation to do any of that. So if there is a volunteer who feels that, oh, maybe I can't do this because I couldn't afford to pay for tea and cake, there's no obligation to do that. That's just something that happens organically with your client if it's something that you both want to do. But we will cover all of that. We will also cover all travelling expenses to get to the training course as well, if that's required, and any parking that might be needed to park near the training course as well.
And when the volunteer take the client to a tea, coffee, or like maybe a meal or something, how does it work expenses wise? Do they share the expenses? Is it?
Yeah, we cover all this in the training because it is
Okay.
it's definitely worth laying out. But what will usually happen is that the volunteer will be we'll be able to say to the client, you know, I'd love to go for a tea and cake, just so that we don't make it awkward. What's the best way to split the costs? And what we suggest is that you just go Dutch and pay for each your own, or logistically easier is one pays one week, pays the next week. There are volunteers who will be quite happy to pay for the client every week. It might be that they're very aware that the client is struggling financially and the volunteer is in a position to pay. That's absolutely fine. There are also, though, many clients who wish to pay for the volunteer because it's like a thank you. And in fact, that's when it becomes a bit more complicated because the volunteers don't really want that to happen. So usually it will be something that we'll give you a sort of an idea of what to say at the beginning. And it usually works out okay. Susan, I don't think that you've ever had any major trouble with that. More likely the client will maybe want to pay for you.
Yes, clients usually want to make sure that you're not going to be out of pocket in any way. And there's never really been a problem with anything like that. I've done both. I'll buy mine and you buy yours. But also I'll pay one week, you pay the other. And it's worked out very well. There's never been any uneasiness.
Thank you. Yeah, go Lisa.
Sorry, Frida, go.
Corporate, I think. Go.
Do you receive corporate volunteers?
Now, this is a really interesting question because we get offered corporate volunteers quite often, but we can't use them to be visiting volunteers.
No, of course not.
Unless they just do the training as everyone else does, in which case the corporate volunteering can work. We've had a small number over the years who have been given the time off by their company to do the training with us and then give them time off to visit their client. Small numbers, but it's wonderful. I mean, if you've got a company that will do that, that is great for us. But in terms of corporate volunteering in a more group sense, the only time we have used corporate volunteers is, and it works really well, is we've got a group now who came to us who helped us with a big event that we did. So we did a big event over the summer, like a show and we had a stand there, and we needed quite a few volunteers to give out our goodie bags, give out our literature, and just to give a very general sense of who we are. And there was a company who offered us a big group, and that was brilliant. And from that's kind of where we asked for our corporate volunteers. We did also years ago have a wonderful group of corporate volunteers who repainted our old office. They were marvelous, but it would be more a one-off thing, so it would be more helping us with an actual event than visiting. But as I say, if somebody's company has got a system where you can have the time, we would definitely be interested in talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, that's all my questions. Frida, have you got any more?
Yeah, no.
Can I just mention one more thing that I forgot to mention as well?
Yeah, yes.
We've talked quite a bit about how this is quite a it is a one-to-one role. You know, Susan's mentioned it's incredibly rewarding, but you really do need to like people, and the role is one-to-one with another human being. So just it's important for me just to mention that we at the Brigitte Trust, then we offer support to our volunteers after you've trained with us. So once you've started visiting visiting a client, we will then provide you with a support group. We call them support groups. It's like a supervision setting. And then every other month, you will come to a group to talk about your client, talk about how you're getting on. And it's a really important part of what we do, because it's quite a lone working role, and we want to make sure that firstly you get that support in case you want to go over anything, but also that you feel connected to the trust. So we do ask all the people that come to us to volunteer that you do attend every other month a meeting, and we do them face to face and on Zoom, so we cater for everyone, and we ask that you come and get the support that you need. And they're actually a really interesting part of the volunteering, because Susan, you meet all the other volunteers, don't you?
Yes, you meet and you hear about other clients, but it also gives you a continuing insight into situations that you might come across later on. And personally, I find it useful to hear other people's reflections on what I'm finding difficult or unusual or sheer joy.
Yeah, and it's wonderful for us because we get to see the volunteers regularly, and you know, it's just as simple as someone might say, you know, I've got this situation, what can I do about it? And then another volunteer in the group will say, well, that happened to me and this is what I did. So that's an important part of what we do. So it's important to mention that once you start volunteering with us, we keep you very much part of our team, and we want to keep that sort of connection going. And then finally, in addition to the support groups, I run quite a comprehensive series of workshops throughout the year, which are for professional development. So they are for all types of things. Like we'll have sessions with local funeral directors, local solicitors. We do regular sessions on meditation and mindfulness. I do a first aid refresher every year. So as volunteers, you then have access to that full program every year as well. So we don't just train you and send you out with the clients. We're very much, you are now part of the team, and we will keep you interested for as long as we can.
Fantastic. That support's there is really important, isn't it? To just do that offloading as well, because you don't want those volunteers to take that home with them.
Exactly that.
Speak with other people that are also supporting people.
Yeah.
Thank you. And before Lisa closes the meeting, Susan, you mentioned sharing a joy. Would you be so kind to share a joy with us?
Yeah, if you like. One of the funniest situations I had was a client, very small lady, who was in a wheelchair and was totally oxygen dependent, and going out shopping was a major undertaking. And one week, as we got to the shops, she said, I want to go to Robert Dyer's. Yeah, fine, we'll go there. What do you want to buy? A leaf blower for the garden. Well, we bought the leaf blower, and you know, they come in really large boxes. And I now had a situation, I had a very small lady with an oxygen tank in a wheelchair with a leaf blower across the entire chair, and we couldn't get out of the door of the shop. And once we'd rejigged that, I realised, because we were in the Belfry in Red Hill, that it also wasn't going to fit with her into the lift back
no.
up to the car park. And we were both in hysterics, but I had to park her outside Robert Dyer's with strict instructions not to move, while I legged it over to the lift, up to the second floor, around the car park, down the leaf blower, and ran all the way back to get her. But it led to an awful lot of giggling when we had coffee a bit later on, and lines about, and that is the last time we are going to buy a leaf blower. But you know, it was a story she told other people, and it was a story I told at supervision. You won't believe what happened this week.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you like
you.
people, it's great.
Fantastic. And how can they people get in touch with you, Mandy?
Okay, so you can go to our website, which is brigittetrust.com. So you can go to our website. If you want to apply, you can go to our website. There's an online application form. You can fill it in. That comes directly to me. I will then be in touch with the next steps pretty quickly. So you can do that. It's very obvious. When you go to the website, there's a tab called volunteer. And if you click on that, then it will just says something like apply to be a volunteer. So that's very clear. You can do that. However, if you would like to contact us first, if you want to speak to me first, all my details are on the website. So you can phone and speak to me first. So sometimes that's quite useful for people. They might want to have a conversation with me first before applying, and that's absolutely fine. I quite like that, actually. So more than happy to do that. Again, all my details are on the website, and you can call and we'll have a chat about whether it's suitable for you. So the next course that we're running is in February. Dates are already set, so it's there if people want to book onto that now. Once you've decided that you would like to go forward with us, and that the role sounds like it's for you, I will then meet you, usually face to face, although we can do it on Zoom now, but I do quite like to meet people in real life before we actually go forward with the course. So we could meet it's at some point before the next course. So we've got some time before the next course, although it is going quickly, isn't it? And you know, we will need to meet at some point. So if you are interested, have a look on our website and get in touch.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. It's been lovely to meet with you both.
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.